Good evening, everyone. Zashin from Zashin Zone here. Got a short clip from Tucker's show where he's talking to a young gentleman from Vox about how Facebook should be modifying how they promote news on their site. So let's take a listen to this conversation.
Smugness and groupthink. Well, there's a new scourge in America. You may have heard of it because it's newly famous. It's called fake news. It's something the left is very exercised about, and the idea is propaganda is finding its way into your daily read and influencing your behavior. Hillary Clinton, in some of her first remarks since losing the presidency last month, described it literally as life-threatening. The question is, what should we do about it, and can we do anything without abridging freedom of speech? We want to talk tonight to someone who's on the front line.
Short answer: no. There is no real way to stop fake news without shutting down free speech. Now, what this gentleman mentions is a way that could suppress fake news, but it could also suppress legitimate news because it makes someone have to choose whether something gets promoted or not based on opinion rather than facts.
Of the battle over fake news. His name is Tim Lee. He works at Vox.com, the famous and very valuable news site. And he says big media companies aren't doing enough to stop it. Tim joins us now. Tim, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So I don't think anybody is for fake news or for inaccurate information or propaganda. I mean, it's offensive. But I guess the point I would make is it's everywhere. Now, I read Vox.com every day. I've got a rich and varied media diet. And here are some of the things I've learned on your site. And I want you to buckle your seatbelt because this was on Vox. There is a bridge between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. False. There are 102 toilets per person in Boulder, Colorado. Not true. If you had 10.9 billion Syrian refugees, you'd probably only have 3 terror attacks. That's bad math. Here's my favorite. There was a man who escaped both doomed Malaysian Airlines flights. And finally, and I could go on, Germany isn't a major arms dealer. Actually, it's number 3. Kathleen Sebelius resigned because Obamacare was successful. I mean, on and on and on. Your site, like a lot of sites, has fake news on it. Should we shut it down? Should the Congress act? Should Facebook take it out of its news feed?
No, absolutely not. And to be clear, I'm not advocating that Congress do anything here. Facebook's a private company. They said.
No. Notice, he points out the whole idea here. The whole idea here is to keep Congress out of this discussion and use private companies to control what people can receive on the internet. If you can't get the government to do what you want, just go to a private company instead and force them to do it.
Their own editorial policies, and I'm encouraging them to raise the standard for the kind of content that they direct their readers to. And look, you cherry-picked. We've been around for 3 years. We've published hundreds of articles, and yes, we make some mistakes. The difference is when we make mistakes, in those rare occasions, we change the article to fix the mistake. We issue a correction like any reputable news organization.
No, actually, that's it. I'm anticipating you might say that. I checked, and some of these pieces are still up. The IRS scandal is proof the IRS needs a bigger budget? Huh? Sebelius is still there because Obamacare succeeded? That's still up. The idea that, 10.9 billion Syrian refugees would lead to 3 terror attacks? That's still up. I just looked at it. You haven't corrected those things.
So those seem like more analytical things. Straight up,
they're not
factual.
true.
Fake is fake, no matter how you look at it. And this guy's not going to... He's there to defend Vox. He's there to defend his ideal. And I sort of feel sorry for him because... he's the one being put in the hot seat by Tucker, and that's good. I'm glad he did it. Being willing to go up in front of millions of people like that, it takes some guts. But if he had logically thought this all the way through, like most liberals do not want to. They want to have their trigger warnings and just shut down free speech. He'd understand that the only way to stop bad ideas is shine them in the light of day. Let it get out there. Because the more people see it, the better chance people of logic are going to look at it and say that's bullshit. Call it bullshit and get the message out that that's wrong.
That's propaganda. That's what you're accusing the fake news producers of making.
Well, no, I mean, for example, one of the most widely shared fake news articles claimed that the Pope had endorsed Donald Trump. That simply did not happen.
That's
there was
wrong,
no evidence that that happened.
Right.
That is different from claiming that, making analysis about why Kathleen Sebelius resigned. You can agree or disagree with that.
It's no different from saying there are 102 toilets per person in Boulder, Colorado. I mean, you're more offended by one than the other, but they're both totally wrong. And the point is, look, who's going to make these decisions? The promise of journalism is, the only reason we're allowed to practice this in the first place, is there's a free flow of information. If you don't like something, explain why it's wrong, make a counter case. And you're saying don't even bother with that, just shut it down. Just crush it.
No, what I'm saying is that the Facebook is part of that free flow of information. They are a company that is in the business of directing people to certain types of content. They are not simply showing people the content that their users are sharing. They're choosing from the many different types of content that their users share which ones are most worth sharing, and they could be do a better job of putting first in the news feed the stories that are from more reputable outlets with a history of.
The problem is, as we saw this last year, reputation means shit over whether they're going to put out a lie or not. Opinions have come to mean more to news anchors and news reporters than the facts. What everybody really wants is for the news to go back to giving us facts rather than opinions, and let us decide for ourselves what we want to believe, rather than being browbeat about the fact that we are not necessarily morally correct because that reporter says so.
Doing good journalism and putting at the bottom of the list stories that are clearly factually erroneous, like claiming that, for example, that the Clinton campaign was running a pedophilia ring out of a pizza joint in Washington, D.C. There was no evidence for that. Okay. And Facebook could do they can do the same thing with Fox. If we do publish an inaccurate article, and Facebook determines it to be inaccurate, they should put that to the back of the line as well.
But I guess what bothers me here, and I think it should bother you too, you're a working journalist, you write pieces, you cover things. The idea that someone somewhere is making totally subjective judgments about what's legitimate, what's illegitimate, what's worth sharing, what's not, what's propaganda, what's true. I mean, these are things that are subject to the whims of people, and once you start making those judgments, you start suppressing other points of view. I mean, the New York Times, I assume you would describe it as legitimate. They put all kinds of fake junk out about the election. They predicted Hillary was going to win, Trump could never win, Hispanics would never vote for. I mean, a lot of things they wrote as fact were not fact. You would never consider suppressing them, would you?
Well, no, but I think that's actually exactly backwards. As journalists, I understand that a key part of journalism is choosing which information is most reputable and showing that information to journalists. And I just think that Facebook, as the largest media organization in the world, arguably, needs to start taking some responsibility. Just like the New York Times, just like Fox, just like Fox News, you shouldn't just put any kind of garbage up on the New York Times website. You shouldn't put any garbage up on Fox News.
Okay. Now you're trying to equate a social media platform where free speech should be free. I mean, unless it causes you to get into a liable situation, I don't care if you spout bullshit. Facebook, YouTube, these are social media sites. If I'm looking at what I expect to be a news site, I expect to get facts. And the problem is, since news sites cannot get their facts straight, there's no reason for anybody anywhere to sift through what's put out there for me. Let me find stuff. If I choose not to vet it, and I'm stupid enough to believe it, that's my fault. Pizzagate was something they mentioned here a little while ago. I looked into it some. I had heard about it. I didn't give it any weight because it was too much conspiracy and conjecture. It had no real facts behind it that I felt were solid enough to feel it was a good thing. It was a good news story. But when we see stuff from reputable news sites, we expect them to have already been vetted and factual, and opinions this last year have overrode facts way too many times.
And Facebook should not be sharing an article that says that that the Pope endorsed Donald Trump.
But see, here's what bothers me. When you say take responsibility, what you're really saying is assume more power. And as a journalist whose job it is to challenge those with power, I think you would say, wait a second, Facebook has too much already. It's the most powerful arbiter of information since the invention of language, since people lived in caves and grunted. All the news in America pretty much flows through Facebook. You want to say to them, go beyond your current responsibilities and decide what people can.
Hey, Tucker, over here on YouTube, all that information goes through here too.
See, I mean, that's too much power concentrated in too few hands, wouldn't you say?
No, I'm not saying that anything should be suppressed. With the news feed, Facebook decides here are the ones we're going to put at the top of the list, and here are the ones we're going to put at the bottom. Right now,
and with your system, those who speak in the politically correct speak will get pushed to the top because opinion makers will be pushing it up there, and the liberals that run Facebook will push the things in their opinion are correct. They're not going to hire 10,000 fact checkers to check each and everything that's put up on Facebook and be able to do it strictly by facts. It will be done by opinion. Somebody will have to have an opinion as to whether to push it up or down that chart.
The criteria they use, the primary one is how many times is something shared. And we've seen that people like to share inflammatory stories that are often inaccurate. I'm just saying that Facebook should change the way they prioritize articles so that articles.
So what's inflammatory mean?
Well, I'm just saying that often.
Is it okay to share inflammatory stories you disagree with, right? I mean, to you, a story arguing on behalf of parts of birth abortion would not be inflammatory, but to someone in Utah, it might be. You see what I'm saying? It's subjective.
Right. No, I'm not saying that they should suppress inflammatory ones, but I'm saying that often.
And you can see Tucker grinning at the fact he's had to make him change. Inflammatory was used because inflammatory is an emotional word. Now he's going to make the argument he wants to see it more factual, and I've already debunked why the idea that it's not going to be based on facts.
The fake news ones, because you can make up facts, often, saying the Pope endorsed Trump is a very highly shareable story.
That's one example, but I doubt you could name 10. And this is a threat to speech, and I think you kind of know what I'm talking about. You're a journalist, and I kind of get what you're saying, but I think we should be very vigilant about attempts to suppress information that we disagree with, and I hope you would agree with that.
I absolutely agree we should not suppress, but again, Facebook is not the government. Facebook is a private organization.
Right.
It's a large organization, and it's not taking more power. It is using the power it has. It is already making decisions about which articles.
When did the left start making apologies for big business? I guess when big business went left. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Well,
they have more power than the
left,
government in my life. I know that. Tim, unfortunately, we're out of time. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, there's a little bit Tucker doesn't realize here is that big business as a whole has not went left. Big business as a whole is still as conservative as it's always been. But a vocal minority of big business, the social media websites, and Hollywood, these are people that can really get in front of cameras and express their opinions and have it re-put out to the masses easily, have went left. Okay, we've got Facebook being ran by people that are barely older than millennials, and they don't, at this point in their life, they don't grasp the concept of how much free speech really means. They're still operating on an emotional level that is more about, well, that hurts my feelings, so it must be hate speech. Well, I can hurt your feelings without hating you. Just because I hurt your feelings doesn't mean I've done anything wrong. That's a concept they've got to come to understand. So I don't want to see us go the way of Canada, who is getting more and more litigious in limiting their speech. I don't want to see us go the way of Europe, there are countries in Europe that really are using YouTube and Facebook to limit speech. They're taking down comments made strictly based on their laws that limit speech. This is the United States. Bill of Rights, Amendment number 1, free speech. But it specifically says that you can't libel someone. That is a specific limit on free speech. Since then, we have had some other laws come into place that say you can't say fire in a crowded theater. You can't say bomb on an airplane, because these create situations that can cause people to get hurt. So there is a public protection policy there. The people on the left have the right to call me a racist because I'm white. I can't say they don't have that right just because I'm white. Is it true? No. It is not. Is it libelous? No, because in this country, most people believe that all whites are racists anyway. So it's not, I don't believe it could be honestly proven as libel. The fact this is okay is a problem. Things have changed so much in the last 40 years. Yet, in some areas, they've not changed at all. And that's the end of my video about this. I hope y'all have a good day. This is Zashin of Zashin Zone. Like, favorite, subscribe. All that's down there in the buttons below. And y'all take care of each other. Love one another. And Merry Christmas.